G'day, Rockhound here! In this video, I'm going to provide you with a complete beginner's guide to solving Embark Studios Easter egg puzzles which they have been presenting to the Finals Discord community since early September 2022. I thought now, while we're between the closed beta for the Finals and whatever comes next, would be a good opportunity to introduce the newer members of the Finals community especially to the alternative reality game that the Embark Studios art team have been running as part of the build-up to releasing the game. First, I'll give you a little background about why these out-of-game puzzles exist in the first place, then I'll explain how the puzzles are divided up into tiers and levels. I'll then show you how to uncover the clues, which is easier said than done. Some of the clues are so well hidden we still haven't found them. I'll then go through the different types of clues that we get using examples from the last tier of the puzzles that we have solved. Then I'll take you through how those of us in the Easter egg channel of the Finals Discord organise all the clues we find and our ideas for possible solutions in a single place, so that everyone in the community has the info they need to have a good go at solving them. We'll then look at how clues for the puzzles are structured into a hierarchy as we go through a selection of the clues from Tier 1D and show how we eventually solved that puzzle. And finally, I'll show you a couple of special types of clues, one of which can potentially take us straight to the last level of the entire puzzle. So the aim of this video is not only to be a beginner's guide to how the Embark Studios Easter egg puzzles are presented, structured and solved, and to help you be that person that comes up with a solution to the next puzzle, but it will also give you a little summary of the most recent puzzle tier that we've solved. Now let's get started with a little background. These Easter egg puzzles from Embark Studios are the brainchild of Embark co-founder and their chief content officer Rob Runison, who amongst the Finals Easter egg hunting community is affectionately known as Saint Rob, the patron saint of Easter egg hunters and lost time. Rob has been making games for around 25 years, and prior to Embark he was at DICE for many years working on games like Mirror's Edge, Battlefront, a bunch of racing games and many Battlefield titles. The Battlefield franchise in particular is renowned for its Easter eggs, many of which Rob would have been closely involved with and some of which were very elaborate and highly visible to all players within a round. So Rob is a long-time Easter egg creator, and therefore it comes as no surprise that he'd be making Easter eggs for Embark Studios games. But perhaps what did surprise me more is that he would start a complex series of Easter egg puzzles for the Finals community outside of the game prior to its release. Keep in mind that almost all Easter eggs like this in games are created in the developer's spare time, so their creation doesn't get in the way of a game's development. These are done purely from Rob's desire to make them. Speaking of which, I would like to take a moment to thank Rob for providing me with some additional notes during the making of this video, which has helped me to make the information as accurate as possible for you. Hello?
Are you at your house that look like missile silo owned by drug dealer?
Yes. Now have you found the flamingo?
I track it to Seoul City in the Korea.
Oh really? How close did you get to it?
I get photo of bird. Here, I send photo now.
Wow, that's definitely it. Did you get a chance to capture the bird?
Chance? Yes. Capture? Yet. There was a great Korean fried chicken with kimchi restaurant nearby and I'm very hungry, so I eat. You should try restaurant. Great Korean fried chicken with kimchi. Unbelievable. Here, I send photo now.
Right.
Then I return from great Korean fried chicken with kimchi and the bird is gonski.
Okay. Well, do you have any clues about where it went?
I think airport.
Okay. Well, get after it and keep me posted on its whereabouts.
Rock, would you like me to send you a menu from restaurant with great Korean fried chicken?
Anyhow, once the Finals releases, my expectation is that almost all of the Easter eggs will move to being in-game rather than through rendered images. So what's the point of having these pre-release Easter eggs? Well, firstly, it's a neat way for Rob to keep the Finals community entertained while we wait for the game to release, especially during the downtime between playtests. The gap between the closed alpha and the closed beta was about 5 months, so the downtime for the community isn't insignificant. Secondly, it provides Rob and Embark with an outlet for concept art and renders for the Finals, so in a way there is still a little ongoing marketing for the game between playtests. Let's now go over the tiers and levels of the puzzles. The puzzles are divided into levels, and those levels are subdivided into tiers. Each tier will have multiple images that are presented to us, and they each provide multiple clues. Additionally, there are other ways that clues can be provided, which I'll talk about later. This website that Rob has set up serves two purposes. It's the location that we can enter possible passwords to solve each each tier, and it shows us all of the puzzle tiers for level 2 of the puzzles. Level 2 is the current level. The first level, level 1, had a single tier and was completed prior to this website being set up, which is why it's not seen here. Level 2 has 9 tiers in total. Tiers 1A through D, which we have already solved, Tier 1E, which we are currently trying to solve, and Tiers 1F, then 2A, B, C, and 2D, E, F, which look like they'll be concurrent because they're shown side by side, and Tier 3. Rob has told us that there will be at least one more level after level 2 is complete. He's also given us an indication of how difficult the coming tiers will be. Tier 1E is not that hard, to be honest. Tier 1F might be a little harder. Tier 2 A, B, C and Tier 2 D, E, F are actually pretty obvious, and Tier 3 is a walk in the park. I mean, we are only on level 2 and you are still getting a lot of clues. The final level, on the other hand, well, that's a completely different story. So it's not entirely clear if there will only be 3 levels or more than 3. My guess is that level 3 will see the end of the pre-release Easter eggs, because by the time we finish that level, assuming we do, there's a decent chance the game will have been released. And then we'll probably be more interested in finding any in-game Easter eggs. So that's how the puzzles are ordered, but what about actually finding clues? The way each puzzle tier typically starts is that Rob posts an image in the finals Discord, or sometimes another kind of initial clue is presented, and that kicks off the tier. For instance, the last tier, Tier 1D, kicked off with a 404 page appearing on the Tier 1C password page a day after Tier 1C was solved. The 404 page was actually a GIF with an initial clue hidden in it. The first proper image, called Brown Eyed Girl, named after the well-known Van Morrison song, was posted by Rob the following day, and this had a plethora of clues hidden in it. Rob has said that technically each tier can always be solved just using the first image, because all the key clues required to solve the password are always shown in the first image somewhere, but it would be very difficult to achieve this, and to be fair, we've never been able to do this. Usually Rob will post additional images about a week or two apart, providing further clues while the community is still trying to figure out the earlier ones. Clues in later images will often help us to solve clues we already know something about. After all the images for a tier have been posted, we may also get an image or two with Namatama in it, which generally will have more direct clues to help us. Let's talk about uncovering clues. Keep in mind that finding these clues is like looking for animals in the Borneo rainforest. They might be very hard to find, and there are always going to be new types pop up that we've never seen before. So keep your eyes open for anything in the images that looks unusual, or that might not be very unusual but could have a secondary meaning to it. When it comes to uncovering clues, skills with Photoshop or similar applications like GIMP, which is free to use, will definitely help you. But when an image is first posted, there are a couple of websites that you can upload the image to as a starting point that can reveal some of the hidden clues right away. Steg Online's most useful features are LSB half and browse bit planes. LSB half checks the least significant bit of each pixel in an image and identifies any differences that could indicate hidden data. For instance, in this image you can see some numbers and letters located here, and a broken up signature here at the bottom of the image. Browse bit planes allows users to browse through different bit planes of an image and see the values of each bit. In the same image as before, browse bit planes reveals these squares here which present a code. Just a quick note about the word codes here. I'm going to use the word codes throughout the video to include both codes and ciphers. Just to explain the difference, codes generally are the conversion of something meaningful like a sentence into something else that's meaningful, whereas ciphers generally don't have any meaning, so they can be a jumble of words, numbers, or even symbols, and then they get deciphered into something that does have meaning. But for the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to call them all codes. The next website is Forensically, whose features include, among others, noise analysis and luminance gradient. Noise analysis analyzes an image for patterns of noise which can indicate areas that have been digitally altered. Using it here, you can see a number code on the right-hand side of this image and some interesting markings near the lower edge. Luminance gradient analyzes an image for changes in brightness or contrast, which can indicate areas that have been digitally altered. In this image, it reveals a number and letter code very clearly near the lower edge. I've put links to Steg Online and Forensically in the video description below, and I'd like to thank the Finals Discord member Jericho for providing additional information about these. Once we have that initial look at the images using the online tools, what we usually do then is dive into it in Photoshop to reveal those clues the website's revealed more clearly, and also scour the image for other clues that the websites don't show well, such as alterations at an individual pixel level. We'll also use various adjustments to the image in Photoshop to see if we can reveal further clues that are otherwise invisible. Now, I don't want to turn this guide to the Easter eggs into an hour-long Photoshop tutorial, and to be fair, while I'm pretty adept at using Photoshop, I wouldn't consider myself a master. But let's take a look at a typical example of how Photoshop can be used to reveal a clue. Here we have the second image from Tier 1D of the Easter egg puzzles. It's called Red Sports Character. Note the missing H from the word character, which was a clue in itself, but for the moment let's focus on this pink area to the right of the figure. If we zoom in, we can see that there are some faint horizontal stripes and some little diagonal lines that look like light rays, but there's more to be seen here. Let's first adjust the brightness and contrast, and then we adjust the exposure controls. You might now be able to see that there are very faint letters here. This D on the left, an E on the right, and maybe a C up top, and a couple of others here that are harder to read. We can also see some faint curved lines. They're pretty subtle, but if we spent a bit more time on the image, we could probably bring up a little more detail. Now, if we join those lines together as part of two circles, we get this diagram, which I'll come back to shortly. This gives you a very initial idea of just how hard it is to see some of these hidden clues and the tools we currently use. You might have other tools that you can bring to the hunt, so please do so. Now, this doesn't mean that if you don't have Photoshop skills that you can't help in the Easter egg hunt. It just means that your skills might be stronger at interpreting the clues that others find rather than uncovering the clues in the first place. Both the uncovering and the interpreting of clues are super important to solving the Easter egg puzzles. Okay, let's check out some examples of clues from Tier 1D. Many of these required quite a lot of messing around in Photoshop to reveal them, but for the sake of showing you the different types of clues, I'm simply going to show you the clues fully revealed. Hidden words. This is the first image from Tier 1D, and here on the edge of this character's Namatama mask is the word Frombork, which is a town in Poland. And here in the fourth image on the side of the character's weapon is the very blurry word Kumbelhaven, which is a location in Denmark. You can immediately see how hard it is to see some of these clues. To add to that further, after we solved Tier 1D, Rob revealed to us this clue which shows the letters WH and the date October 6, 1995 on the sleeve of the character in image 3. Now, we didn't actually find this clue, and to date we haven't been able to figure out how to properly reveal it in Photoshop either. So if you are a Photoshop whiz, we could definitely use your help, because if you can reveal this clue, you might be able to reveal a bunch of others that we have never uncovered. When we can reveal them, word clues might also appear as leet-speak, which isn't really a code, but more a system of using character replacements that originated from early online bulletin boards of the 1980s. For instance, in image 3, leet-speak is used for the plant name S. melongena, which is the eggplant or aubergine, depending on where you come from. Acronyms. Words might be delivered as an acronym, such as the letters BIV here in image 2, which stands for brain in vat. Signatures. We've also had a few instances where a person's signature appears either whole or segmented. Like in image 1, we have the signature of Polish astronomer Nicholas Copernicus. Numbers. Numbers are a common clue but can have a huge variety of meanings. The very first image provided for Tier 1D was actually a 404 page on the Finals website, which had the number 325 hidden in it. 325 BC is the estimated birth year of Euclid, the father of modern geometry. Perhaps even more curious though is that if we subtract 325 from 404, we get 79, which was the answer for Tier 1B, albeit in Roman numerals. How crazy is that? Sometimes clues are partly obscured, so you have to work out the start or the end of a number or word, like in image 2 here where the word satcat is obscured, but we get the number 25008. Satcat number 25008 was the satellite number for the Cassini-Huygens mission to Saturn. And here in the fourth image we have the number 034535178, which is the ISBN number for the book 2061 Odyssey 3 by Arthur C. Clarke. Codes. Lots of codes. Codes everywhere. Codes are a very common clue, and again come in a huge variety. So let's take a look at a few examples of these. Along the top left corner of image 1, we had some transparent pixels, which had spacing between them of 44, 24, 44, 11, and 33 pixels. This is tap code for the word Titan. Here in image 4, we had 3 unequal parallel lines at the top of the image, which when measured were 202, 456, and 1111 pixels long respectively, with 202, 456, 1111 being the phone number for the White House. Here in image 2, we have 79 equals 48 equals 111 equals 0 times 30, with the first 3 numbers being ASCII for capital O, 0 and lowercase o, and then 0 times 30 being 0. So we end up with capital O equals 0 equals lowercase o equals 0. And here in image 1, these blocks hidden in the background can be converted to binary, which then converts to the word Leith. Symbols. Symbols are a very common clue type, and these thankfully can often be the easiest to spot and decipher. In image 1, the character's earring is the symbol for Saturn. Pretty easy to find and decipher. Image 2's character has the coat of arms for René Descartes' family on her top. In image 3, we see this lightning bolt symbol, which looks identical to that of David Bowie's look from his 1973 album Aladdin Sane. Diagrams and equations. Diagrams or equation clues have appeared a few times, and they can take a bit of time to find their source. Similarly, the diagrams are sometimes shown only as fragments and can take time to figure out their full form. Let's look at a couple of examples. Here's the diagram I revealed in the second image using Photoshop earlier in the video. The diagram is called a vesica piscis, which is a shape formed by the intersection of 2 identical circles. In image 5, we discovered a portion of an equation which we found is the equation for the shape of an egg. I'm sure you can imagine that these things take quite a lot of searching to find what they are. Objects. Next, we have objects that are either just casually placed into the image or well hidden in there. Here we have a Tyrannosaurus Rex, which some of you might recognize as being a possible nod to T-Rexes making various appearances as Easter eggs in the Battlefield franchise as early as Battlefield 3. More difficult to spot is this object, which turns out to be the flower of the eggplant or aubergine, which we saw earlier. And pretty obvious here is what looks like an out-of-focus rain droplet or lens flare, which has an oval or egg shape. Quite an obvious yet subtle clue, that one. Modification of the image's subject. Sometimes the clues can be a direct modification of the subject of the image. For instance, in image 4, the character's left eye has a light reflection at the edge of the pupil, which looks exactly like the diamond ring effect, also known as Bailey's beads, that can occur during a solar eclipse immediately before and after the total eclipse of the sun, as the last part of the sun shines past the edge of the lunar surface. Similarly, the pupil of the character in image 1 is not quite circular and instead is slightly oval. Her right eye also appears to be a different shape and colour than her left one. Supplementary clues. Lastly, there are what I would call supplementary clues. These aren't hidden in the images. For instance, sometimes Rob and Embark Studios customer support lead Dusty Gustafsson will post comments or even have a conversation in the Finals Discord, and those posts include hints or cryptic clues that will help the community to overcome the hardest clues, ones that they might be stuck on. Here's an example where Dusty wrote, "This level has been a minefield of clues. Feels like 47 rabbit holes to go down." And Rob replies, "Nah, Dusty, it's way more clues than that so far, but let's hope they follow the white rabbit and not the red herring." Notice that Rob deliberately left the letter O out of the word not in his second sentence. There are a lot of subtle clues amongst these supplementary ones. And we had one occasion where Rob actually took a photo in Stockholm at Sergels Torg, which is located just a few minutes walk from Embark Studios. The triangular pavement pattern from Sergels Torg also appeared as a symbol clue in image 4. This is really a moment of Rob taking the Easter egg clues to a new level. Now, to be fair, we probably completely miss 30 to 40% of all the clues provided for most tiers simply because we don't uncover them, or we don't recognize them as even being a clue. Or sometimes we might find them but then can't decipher them or understand how they fit in. Despite all of this, we still manage to work out the password. So this game is more of an art than a science. As an Easter egg hunter, you can't get caught up on these things too much. Most of the time, most of us are confused by clues, can't decipher clues, and just kind of blunder our way through it all by trial and error. It's important that you're prepared to be wrong a lot and try to keep an open mind to others' ideas. Solving the puzzles is always a group effort, and that moves us on to how we organise the clue information and ideas we have amongst the Easter egg hunting group. The main place where we Easter egg hunters discuss the puzzles is the Easter egg channel of the Finals Discord. This is the place where everyone posts possible clues, ideas for what clues might mean, and how they might relate to one another, and where everyone discusses what the overall themes of the puzzle might be. Two important things to remember when participating in the Discord discussions about the Easter eggs are that no idea is a bad one if you can relate it to another clue, even better, multiple clues, and always keep an open mind. As an Easter egg hunter, we understandably tend to look for answers that relate to things that we are familiar with, so it helps if you are open to ideas around the clues that relate to things you've never heard of before, because that'll happen a lot. All of us Easter egg hunters have learned a lot in the last few months. This is probably the right place for me to talk about a few self-imposed rules that we Easter egg hunters have put in place about the ways we can uncover and solve the Easter egg clues. The first rule of Easter Egg Club is that we don't try to find clues by diving into image data files. In other words, we don't look for ways to discover the clues without actually having to uncover them using more manual methods like Photoshop. Having said that, before we discuss these rules, one of the very first clues presented to us in level 1 of the Easter eggs was actually discovered in the metadata for this image. This has since become a bit of an in-joke between us and Rob, and he now often leaves us cheery little messages in the metadata. Similarly, and this one is definitely a big no-no, we don't use any method to brute force the password through the password page. And then one that's come up just recently is that we don't use tools like ChatGPT to work out how to decipher codes. If there's a code of some kind, we have to work out what type of code it might be, and then we can use specific tools designed for deciphering that code. There are a couple of good websites for this. Crypti and Decode both have great tools for deciphering multiple codes. And as far as uncovering other information goes, well, let's just say you're free to search wherever you like, but you're definitely going to see a lot of Wikipedia pages while you're trying to solve these puzzles. Now, the reason for all three of these rules is that brute force and non-investigative methods of solving clues or the password obviously take away the expected effort required to find clues and decipher them. And it's being successful at cracking the password by everyone working together that makes it so rewarding when we actually do make a breakthrough. It's also respectful to Rob to operate this way because he's put so much effort into creating these puzzles in the first place. Anyhow, in the Easter egg Discord channel, the images and key links are kept as pinned messages. Those pinned messages are a very good place to start when you first join the group to get an idea of what's been going on with the current tier. To enable everyone to see all the clues as we uncover them, as well as the possible ideas for what they might mean and how they relate to one another at any time, we use a Padlet. Padlets allow us to place each image provided by Rob on a board and surround it with images of the clues we find in the image. We then surround those clues with ideas about what they might mean, and we can also connect clues and ideas that might be related across the entire Padlet. We use a color-coded system to identify what we're looking at. Images are blue, clues are green, ideas of what the clues might mean are orange, and very strong or confirmed ideas are changed from orange to red. As you can see, the Padlet for Tier 1D was pretty substantial by the time the puzzle was solved, which took us a whopping 96 days in total. The Padlet also means that you can jump into the current tier at any time and quickly get an idea idea of where we're at with it, which means you definitely don't have to wait for the start of a tier before you join us in the Easter egg solving. Now that we've seen examples of the common clue types and how we organize information about the clues in the Padlet, let's talk about how the clues are structured in a hierarchy and at the same time show you how we deciphered the clues and eventually came up with the password for tier 1D. The singular end goal for the community once a tier is underway is to come up with a password based on all of the clues that Rob hides in the images, along with any supplementary clues that are part of the current tier. Potential passwords, which will always be lowercase letters and numbers, sometimes mixed together, get entered into the tier's password page on the website that Rob has set up for the Easter egg puzzles. Just a heads up, we enter a lot of wrong passwords. I probably entered a couple of hundred wrong passwords while trying to solve tier 1D of the Easter eggs. You can then imagine just how many wrong passwords are entered by the entire Easter egg hunting community. To understand how the clues combine to point to the password, it's going to be easier if I explain it in a reverse engineering kind of way. So let's do something different and start this part of the movie at the very end. The password for tier 1D was the word oviform with the letter O's swapped out for zeros. Oviform is a synonym for the word oval. Now let's go through a handful of the tier 1D clues and you'll start to get an idea of how they point towards the answer either directly or indirectly. And what do I mean by directly or indirectly? This diagram visualizes the overall way that all the clues are structured, which essentially is that they are divided into primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary clues, plus a couple of special clue types, which I'll mention later. It's somewhat subjective where you think clues fit into the hierarchy, and often we won't actually know what is a primary or lower hierarchy clue until enough clues have been found and their importance starts to take shape relative to one another. Even as we go through these now, I'm sure some of the Easter egg hunters in the Finals Discord community who are watching this video might disagree with where I place some of the clues in the hierarchy, and this is for a tier we've already solved. Okay, let's now dive into the clue hierarchy more. Primary clues. Primary clues are the most important because, as you can see, they will point directly to the password and will often have to be combined together to work out the exact password. When identifying these clues, it should be very hard to disregard the link between them as just being a coincidence. With tier 1D, there were just two primary clues pointing to the oviform password. Oval and O equals 0. Together they get us to the oviform password, and together all the clues were pointing to either ovals or O being the same as 0, or the swapping out of a character or things having more than one viable state. Usually there are just a few of these primary clues, maybe between 2 and 4, but they will always be presented multiple times in many different ways, both within an image and across images in case we miss some of them, and to make us realize their importance. You might also see that these primary clues, oval and O equals 0, can be combined in different ways which might lead to the password. For instance, oviform is a synonym of the word oval, and a synonym can be considered a substitution of a word for another very similar word in the same way that the letter O and the number 0 can be substituted for one another in either a word or a number, and visually you can still make sense of the word or number in which the substitution occurred. So substitution, or things presenting in different but similar states, makes sense as a theme that runs right through a lot of the tier 1D clues. Let's look at a few of the primary clues. In the first proper image, the character had that slightly oval pupil. Her right eye also appears to be a different shape and color than her left one, which could point as a primary clue to both ovals and O equals 0. We also had those numbers in image 2, 79 equals 48 equals 111 equals 0 times 30, with these numbers being ASCII for O equals 0 equals O and 0 times 30 being 0, a clue that pointed very directly to O being equal to 0. However, just having the primary clues doesn't mean you're going to get the password right away, because you won't usually work out that primary clues are primary until they are bolstered by some lower level clues. Tier 1D with its oviform password was the epitome of this, as we had ovals and O equals 0 0 presented as clues in late November, but didn't get the password until around February 22nd. There is a lot of time spent working out how important particular clues are and whether you're looking at a primary or quaternary clue or something in between. For the purposes of this guide, with oval and O=0 known as primary clues pointing to oviform, we'll ignore all those weeks of confusion and going down many wrong paths by the Easter egg hunters, and now build up clues of the lower hierarchy behind these primary ones. So let's talk about these lower clues now. Secondary clues usually feed directly into the primary clues and help to confirm them, and usually have a pretty obvious connection to the primary clues. But once we get to tertiary and especially quaternary clues, we are pretty deep down the rabbit hole. Both tertiary and quaternary clues are often fragments that might give you that eureka moment you need to work out a primary clue or connect them in the end. But they can also be tricky, since you can easily get lost down completely the wrong path when you try and trace and connect them. Rob will often include what you might consider shout-out clues. These are never primary clues and are always tertiary or quaternary clues. The shout-out clues are just as valid as other tertiary or quaternary clues, but they might have a personal twist from Rob, like a nod to another game, a game studio, a famous movie, or a band, or a curious fact or coincidence that most of us have never heard about. In Tier 1D, we had this sort of clue provided from day one, with the main images being named after songs by Van Morrison, as well as a reference to the 1962 sci-fi horror film The Brain That Wouldn't Die, and the reference to the movie The Matrix, which has that related theme of things being in different states, with the characters from the movie either being in the Matrix or the real world. It's easy to get caught up in these shout-outs, especially if you know the shout-out well. As an example, this is the eggplant flower that was hidden in the third image. We previously had other clues pointing to the movie The Matrix, including Rob mentioning white rabbits, so the appearance of eggplants reminded us of the capsules from the human harvesting scene in The Matrix. I then combined that path with ovals, which led me to finding info on an oval-shaped underground creek made of bricks beneath the Australian city of Sydney, which I knew was the location the Matrix movie was filmed. So you can see how these rabbit holes can lead you to some very strange places. My advice to help you avoid falling into the same trap is, when you have a clue that is clearly a shout-out clue, try your best to move on a path away from the shout-out part of the clue as directly as you can. For instance, if it's a shout-out to a song, maybe look at the city the song was recorded or the year it was recorded, and see if those things relate to other clues you've already seen, rather than heading down a path related closely to the band that wrote the song. Rob will also often make tertiary or quaternary clues quite funny and sometimes multi-layered, so they can help to confirm more than one secondary clue. Sometimes these apparent coincidences can be pretty mind-blowing and are a testament to how cleverly Rob constructs the puzzles. Let's now look at a bunch of other examples of lower level clues for Tier 1D and how they link to the oviform password. As we saw earlier, the very first image provided for the tier was actually a 404 page, which had the number 325 hidden in it. 325 BC is the estimated birth year of Euclid, the father of modern geometry, so we'd probably call that a quaternary clue. 325 points to Euclid, Euclid points to geometry, and geometry to the oval. In the second image provided, we had this coat of arms belonging to the French mathematician René Descartes. Cartesian ovals are named after him as he used them in optics, so this is a tertiary clue. The coat of arms to René Descartes, René Descartes to the oval. There were multiple lower-level clues in Tier 1D revolving around Saturn and its moon Titan, all pointing to Giovanni Cassini, known for the Cassini oval. Additionally, Saturn with its rings edge on can be viewed as a 0 with a slash through it, and Titan, being the only moon with an atmosphere, can be viewed as an O, therefore also pointing to the other primary clue of O=0. In image 2, we had that partly obscure word SatCat and the number 25008, with SatCat 25008 being the satellite number for the Cassini-Huygens mission to Saturn and Titan, a tertiary clue that cleverly points to two secondary clues by having both orbits pointing to ovals and Saturn and Titan representing the O=0. Titan reappears again with those transparent pixels with spacings of 44, 24, 44, 11, and 33 pixels between them, which is tap code for Titan, so another tertiary clue. We got a suite of other orbit and therefore oval related clues. In the fourth image, we have the number 03453511738, which is the ISBN number for the book 2061 Odyssey 3 by Arthur C. Clarke, whose story revolves around space travel to Halley's Comet and Jupiter. We'll probably consider this a quaternary clue, with the clue pointing to Halley and Jupiter, those two pointing to orbits, and orbits pointing to ovals. The character's earring in image 1 is the symbol for Saturn, making it a tertiary clue. Further along the space line, that modification to the character's left eye we saw in image 4 looks exactly like the diamond ring effect or Bailey's beads that can occur during a solar eclipse, a clue that points to one circular shape replacing another, so it's a secondary clue pointing to O equals 0. The word Frombork in the first image points to Nicholas Copernicus, as it was his residence. Copernicus points to orbits, which points to ovals, making this another quaternary clue. We also have his signature hidden in image 1, which probably makes it a tertiary clue because the clue doesn't point to Copernicus like Frombork does. His signature actually is him. So you can now hopefully see how a lot of these clues were pointing to two primary clues. However, in reality, it took us a long time to work out those connections. Tier 1D of the puzzle started on November 18, 2022. The word oviform was first mentioned in the Discord on January 1st, 2023, and the answer wasn't worked out until February 22nd. These puzzles are not for those who lack patience and persistence. Lastly, we have two special types of clues. The first are a clue type that Rob mentioned in the information he provided me, and these really haven't been explicitly discussed until now. These are cipher keys. According to Rob, cipher keys are invisible. They don't have any visible clues leading to them, but they are patterns and rules on a higher level, and there are always traces of these through every tier.
It's all part of it. This is what I'm getting at. That's my point. It's the vibe of it.
We might never figure the cipher keys out, but if we do, it will help us to figure out the connection between the clues faster. And finally, we have diamond clues. Now these aren't part of solving the individual tiers, but instead they lead directly to the final level of the entire Easter egg hunt and are therefore extremely complex and extremely hard to crack. We were lucky enough to solve one of these clues during our efforts to solve Tier 1D, when supplementary clues about the book Watership Down, rabbit burrows, and characters being deliberately omitted from words that Rob and Dusty had been dropping into the Discord chat led community member Resk to discover a URL extension on the finals website, which was the word burrow with the O removed. This rather psychedelic GIF is what that URL leads to. We've found one definite clue in this so far. There are a total of 19 frames in the GIF, and the first 6 frames include letters and numbers in the gaps between the expanding ellipses, which spell YMF292. YMF292 is a multifunction sound chip developed by Yamaha for the Sega Saturn console. So there's some retro gaming path to the diamond clues that we are yet to make further headway in, and that's no surprise given how hard the diamond clue path is said to be by Rob Brunison. Okay, so that wraps up our journey through why the finals pre-release Easter egg puzzles exist, how they work, and how you can find clues and solve them. I hope that this video has been helpful for those of you that are interested in joining us in the Easter egg hunt. For the members of the finals Discord, solving these Easter egg puzzles provides us with the reward of overcoming a difficult puzzle that can take weeks or months to solve, as well as being the first to see new art images related to the game. And I think I can speak on behalf of the community when I say we're all very thankful to Rob Brunison and Dusty for providing us the puzzles. If you've made it this far through the video, you should probably consider joining us on the Easter egg hunt in the finals Discord, a link to which is in the video description below, along with links to all of the other resources I've mentioned in this video. Comment below if you have any questions about the Easter eggs. Thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day. Kia kaha, stay strong.
Everybody knows the world ain't right. Down on your knees, get up and fight.